Hello and welcome to Property Development Institute. My name's Steve Chandler and I'm a third generation Australian property developer. Look, in this video, I'm going to explain to you the 5 fundamentals of property development. You see, property development is a process and all you need to do is understand the process to be a property developer. So I'm going to explain the 5 fundamentals of property development. You know, in the past, there are so many people that have said to me, Steve, I'd love to be a property developer, but I don't know how. And other people have said to me, Steve, you know, I'd love to be a property developer, but I haven't got the money. And if that's you right now, don't worry. You know, you're not alone. There are so many people out there who are exactly the same. And to be honest with you, I was exactly the same too. Because when I started my career, look, I wasn't anything. I was nothing. You know? My dad was a property developer, but I wasn't. So I started from zero. Look, I dropped out of school, so I didn't finish school. I did a carpentry trade, so I'm a chippy. And then from there, I started to get involved in other types of post-trade courses and started a career in building. But after a short period of time, I worked out that just working for someone else wasn't really going to make me a lot of money. At a young age, I loved BMWs, and to this day, I still love those cars, and they're dynamite expensive. But what I had was a desire to achieve something, and slowly but surely, I started to learn more and more about property development. But still, I was working for someone. I didn't know how to get that big chunk of money, that big profits that property developers made. So I did something. One day, it just hit me. I bought an apartment. I renovated it and I sold it just over a year later and I made about 35% profit. So 35% in just over a year. Now, that's not bad, and it was more than what my income was at the time. So when you think of that, I actually doubled my income in that particular year. So what did I do? I did it again, but this time with a house, 50%. Then I did it with another house, and then another house, and another, and another. And over the years, I've made millions of dollars out of buying, renovating, and selling property. Now, you can too. Why can't you? Start small. That's what I did. You just start small. As my building career developed over a period of time, I then moved into property development and started working for some very large property development companies. And guess what? I started making millions of dollars for them on these large-scale projects, and that was absolutely amazing. The money that can be made out of those big projects is absolutely enormous and something that you'd really like to do yourself. So what did I do? I went and started another project, but this time I started something on a much bigger scale. So whammo, out I went. Yep, this is great. I was going to make a fortune. And then, of course, the GFC happened, the global financial crisis. Well, that changed things a lot. And what it made me realise is there were a lot of things that I had learned that I didn't put into place in that particular project. And as a result, I'm still, to this day, getting over the impact that that had on me at the time. So for anyone coming into the property development industry, I swore if I could help them to not make the mistakes that I've made, that I would. Well, as a result, 3 years ago, I started lecturing at university. I started delivering property development training all over Australia for my industry's peak industry body. And I wrote some books on property development for people beginning in the market. So I've done all these things because I didn't want people to go through what I had gone through. And more recently, I've created a training program for people. And this training program is called Property Development Pentagon. And the Pentagon explains those 5 fundamentals of property development. So let me just quickly put them up on the wall and tell you what they are. The first fundamental is acquisition. If you don't acquire a property, you can't develop a site. But there are so many ways of acquiring a property. And again, you might be sitting there saying, Steve, that's great. Acquisition is the first fundamental, but I haven't got any money. Well, what if I told you you could acquire a site without any money? Interested? Absolutely. So acquisition, you can acquire sites without any money. The second fundamental is feasibility. So feasibility is knowing the financial aspects of your project. And feasibility, there are a number of different types of feasibilities that you use at various stages throughout a property development project. The third fundamental is authorities. Authorities. Without an approval from the authorities, you do not have a development project. So you may have acquired a property, done your feasibility to know how much money you're going to make, but you're not going to make any of it unless you get your authority approval. So understanding how to deal with authorities and the processes and procedures by which you can actually achieve an approval are critical to property development. The fourth fundamental is revenue, the money that comes in. All of your development is subject to, the profitability of your development is subject to the revenue that you receive. So there are so many different aspects of the revenue stream that you can utilise to improve your bottom line. We'll learn all about that, but revenue is amazing. Number 5, delivery. This is the creation of the built form, the building work, the construction activities that create the properties that you're going to sell. So the 5 fundamentals all interrelate to each other. Acquisition, you must have a development site. Feasibility, it must be feasible or viable for you to be able to do it. Authorities, without an approval, you don't have a development. Revenue, without someone buying your development or leasing your development, you have no revenue. And delivery, without design and construction of the built form, you don't have anything to sell to anybody. So these are the 5 fundamentals of development, which I have created a program called Property Development Pentagon. Now, I'd like to take you through more information on acquisition. You see, acquisition is the essential component of being profitable with your development. And there are a number of different ways that you can actually acquire a site. So let's have a look at a few of those. I'm going to write them on the board over here for you. Whenever you buy a property, the standard way that you buy a property is what I'll call outright purchase. So an outright purchase is simply when you go, you offer a dollar value for a site, it's accepted, there's an exchange of contracts, and a period of time later, there's a settlement, you hand over whatever the agreed value was, and you now own that property. So an outright transaction is fantastic. You get the title to the property, and you can then do anything permissible under the planning schemes that may apply as far as development is concerned on that property. The next form of acquisition that you can use is what we call an option agreement. Now, there are two forms of option agreement. There's a call option and a put and call option. Now, a call option is when you agree to buy a property from someone at some point in the future for an agreed future value. However, you are not compelled to do so. So you have the right to acquire the property for the agreed future value at some stage in the future, but you don't have to if things don't work out for you or you're not in a position to be able to do that. So you can acquire a property and work out what you can develop on it, get an approval, do everything except for start construction with a call option agreement. So you don't actually have to own the site. So you don't have to own it outright. You will have to own it outright once you start construction. A put and call option agreement is where you agree to buy a property at some stage in the future, but this time you're compelled to buy it and the owner can put it to you that you have to settle if by the end of the option period you haven't settled that transaction. So the fundamental differences are, with a call option agreement, you can acquire someone's property at a point in time in the future for an agreed value without having to pay for the property. You can always walk away. You don't have to settle. If something happens, you don't get your authority approval or something of that nature, you can walk away without having to settle on that property. A put and call option agreement is similar to a call, except you cannot walk away. At the end of the option period, if you have not settled, then the owner can force you through the put component of the option for you to actually settle. The third way that you can acquire a property to develop is through a joint venture. Now, a joint venture agreement allows you extreme flexibility. If you are putting in the property development expertise, other people, your joint venture partners, may be putting in the cash. So this is a great way for you to undertake property development projects without any money. If you've got a little bit of money and you have a few friends, perhaps you can pool your resources into a joint venture, whether they're financial or intellectual property, your knowledge and skills in property development. perhaps you could do a joint venture. That's something that you should consider, particularly when you have the skills and not necessarily have the large equity that some property developments require you to have. The next way, and the last one that I'll be talking about today, ways for you to acquire a site, is through what we call development agreements. Development agreements quite often are where a landowner has a property and they don't want to sell it, but they want to be part of a development without being the developer. So for example, you may have approached them to obtain an option to purchase their property, and they've said, no, we don't want to sell the property to anybody. We actually want to be part of a property development, but we don't know anything about development. We need a development partner who's going to develop our land. This is where you would use a development agreement. So the way that you might structure that, and again, with joint ventures and development agreements, everything is negotiable. Absolutely everything is negotiable because we're talking about commercial transactions. So a development agreement, you may simply say that the landowner puts in the land. Now, you do everything else. Now, the landowner may well be someone who says, that's great, but I have no money in my pocket other than the value of my land. You might say, okay, I have no cash of my own, but there's nothing stopping you creating a joint venture with someone who has some cash to then enter the development agreement with a landowner. So there's always a way for someone who doesn't have the cash to get into a property development. Now, the structure of your development agreement will require that the landowner gets paid the land value at settlement once all of the development is complete and the money comes in the door. But not only that, they'll get a share of the development profits. So again, this is a great way of doing a property development without having to have the cash, without having to pay for the land. And it's a way that many people make a lot of money in the current market. All of this, the 5 fundamentals of property development, the acquisition, the feasibility, the authorities, the revenue, the delivery, all of the different methodologies of acquiring the sites, and so much more are all in the Property Development Pentagon program. And look, I'll be really honest with you, if a high school dropout can learn this and bring all this together, it just makes it simple for you. It's an easy, simple program, something that you can enjoy right from the comfort of your own home, learning to be a property developer. I truly hope that I've been able to add some value to you here today. In a couple of days' time, I'll send you another email with a little bit more video information for you. Hopefully, it will help you understand more and more about those 5 fundamentals of the property development process. Steve Chandler, thank you for your time today.